Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel EV Solar and Kilowatts. Today we're going to take a look at the January stats for our solar generation. A couple of things that worthy of note in this particular video. January is lights getting better. We're moving more towards the spring equinox, so days are getting slightly longer, so hopefully we should see some better curves of solar production. Another thing that's probably worth mentioning, we're in excess every month of the projection which we had from our installers of just how much solar we would generate. I think we've produced about 168 kilowatts in January, which is a fraction of what we're going to get, what we'll be getting in the summer months, but still about 40 kilowatts, 50 kilowatts in fact, more than what we were projected to get, which is quite a substantial increase actually. So that goes to show that sometimes these things aren't overly accurate, and projections really are only projections, because of course it's all very dependent on the weather, and of course these projections are based on the perfect array and various other sort of matrix that go into there as well. So yeah, it's good to know that we are in excess of what was projected. And the last thing is the fact that we changed over from Octopus Agile to Octopus Go, and then the invite for Octopus Go Faster, which I'll talk to you about that process in just a moment. So for those that haven't watched the channel before, just to give you an idea of our setup, we have 7.5 kilowatts of JA solar panels on the roof. The generation from the solar panels is DC. That's converted via AC inverter, which is a SolarEdge inverter with the SolarEdge platform. That's what we're going to have a look at in a few moments' time. The other items or a bit of equipment that we have in order to maximize our solar generation is the MyEnergy Eddy. This is a solar converter, so we'll use the excess solar energy that we have to convert that electrical generation into hot water via an immersion heater. And the last bit of kit that we have is a MyEnergy Zappy, and that again can be used as a simple straightforward time charger for our Nissan Leaf, or it can be used, and there are various modes within that, I've covered that on other videos, or it can be used purely as excess solar again. So if the house is using less than what's being generated by the panels, some of it then goes to the Eddy, and then some of it then goes to the Zappy to charge the car. So we're maximising the amount of energy that we produce, and that's really what you want to do. So that's our setup. As I say, we're now on Octopus Go Faster. So if you're not familiar with Octopus Energy, you may have seen their adverts on the TV and wondering what all this green energy company is about, and are they just a new sort of startup that will fizzle out, and what is this green energy all about? Well, Octopus has been going for a little while now, and they kind of changed the way in which or trying to change the way in which people are using their energy, and being a little bit more conscious of how and when they use particularly high demand devices like your ovens and microwaves and dishwashers, washing machines, etc. And specifically, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, charging your car. Now, these things use 7 kilowatts, which is like 2 ovens in one go. So they're quite high consumers. And if we continue to use our energy and high demand items at, if you like, the peak times, then of course that gets quite expensive. And it's expensive because everybody's doing it at the same time. We're using huge generators to generate all this demand in a short space of time. The plants are at capacity, sometimes having to buy in energy from other companies and from other countries, and so that all costs money. Now, if you're on a fixed tariff, that doesn't really matter. You can use your energy whenever you want. And that's kind of the, if you like, I call the old way of energy consumption. You have a fixed bill, you pay a fixed item, a fixed price for your consumption, whether it be electricity or gas, and you basically don't worry about it, and you get your bill. And then each time you come to renew, you look around, you put your projections in, and then you look at another fixed tariff, and hopefully you get that a little bit cheaper. What Octopus Energy do is they're a green company. So when they buy their energy, they're not exclusively, but almost exclusively, what I can sort of read between the lines, buying green licenses. So they're buying green energy from wind and from solar, hydro and pumped hydro power. It's very simple, really. When they buy this energy, they buy it at a certain rate and they buy it at the wholesale rates like any supplier will do. But of course, because they're more green, when they're buying more green licenses, their energy, when we're producing a lot of wind or producing a lot of solar or a lot of hydro power, which only constitutes a small portion of that, then their electricity is quite cheap. So they take a bit of a hit when the energy is quite high or the price is quite high, and then they get the benefits of when that's quite low, which means you as a consumer can benefit from the same. So an Octopus Agile, and forgive me if this is sounding a little bit complicated, I'm trying to keep it simple, but you as an Agile customer will benefit from those same rates. So you will be buying, or they will be buying, and they will be charging you at a wholesale rate with obviously a little bit of a premium on top for obviously Octopus to run that tariff. It can be as low as a couple of pence per kilowatt at off-peak times of the day, but then it goes up to about 35 pence at the peak time of the day, and that's typically around 4 to 7 p.m. That's typically when people are at home, all cooking their meals, using their ovens, etc., and it gets very expensive. And it's an expensive time of the day to use it simply because the cost of generating that energy costs more. And obviously at the off-peak time of the day, then outside of that 4 to 7, it's quite a bit cheaper. And those of you that are on Economy 7 will be familiar with this, because between sort of midnight and sort of 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, whatever it might be, or Economy 5 you might have, then you benefit from cheaper energy during those periods. And those of you that have got Economy 7 heaters will know just about how that works. So it's a really useful tariff, and what it tries to do is get consumers more sensitive to avoiding those peak times of energy consumption and expensive times of energy consumption. Again, if you're on a fixed tariff, you don't worry about this. But if you want to try and save on your bills, you can just keep swapping on fixed tariffs, and there are savings to be made there. But there are some significant savings to be made if you can move your energy and avoid those peak times, avoid those expensive times, and ultimately avoid those times that are generating the greatest CO2 into our atmosphere. Now, our house, we've got 2 teenagers. When they were at school, they were finishing at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30, and by the time they came home from school, they were really, really hungry. I typically work early shifts, which means I'm home by about lunchtime, and then my wife works 3 or 4 evenings a week, and she has to go to work at 5. So a good time for us to eat in the afternoon is at 4 o'clock. So that's when we have our tea, and then we're not sitting around with big dinners in our bellies at sort of 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, or just before you go to bed, which is a little bit uncomfortable. So that works quite well for us, and it won't work for everybody, but for us, we don't have the oven on and that sort of thing on beyond 4 o'clock, which means from 4 till 7, we have very low consumption, and that's when the energy goes up to about 35 pence, which is capped with Octopus Agile. So our weighted energy prices during Octopus Agile tariff has been really, really good. So our previous supplier, British Gas, we were something like 18 pence per kilowatt for our electricity. And interestingly, Agile can beat that just on their basic tariff. So, I mean, even if you just went onto a fixed tariff with Agile, it's still significantly better than you can get elsewhere, or from the big 6, as they call it. So our weighted price was about 8 or 9 pence per kilowatt, which was saving us, less than 50%. And of course, with the benefit of the solar panels as well, when we are generating, we can avoid a lot of that a lot of that consumption as well. So our weighted price was about 80 pence. 80 pence, about 8 pence, definitely not 80 pence, about 8 pence versus the sort of 18 that we were paying, which is great. So you're asking them, well, why have you moved on to Go, and why have you moved on to Go Faster? Well, before I move on to that, I have to say that one of the other great things about our Octopus Agile Tariff is that I mentioned to you that we have peaks and off peaks part times of the day, and Octopus use green energy. Well, when we get a lot of strong winds, or we get a lot of sunny days, but typically strong winds over a period of time, the national grid also has very up-to-date weather forecasts, perhaps more accurate than what we can see. And they will make a prediction, and they will have their generators, their gas generators, and their nuclear power plants providing energy based on that assumption. Well, sometimes the wind exceeds what the national grid can actually cope with. That sounds a little bit crazy, isn't it, really? Wind farms actually exceeding the energy. When wind farm first came out, we just thought these things were just an eyesore and were totally useless. Well, they're not. And of course, they're springing up all over the country now, and they are producing a lot of energy. Now, when these things are really spinning on a really, really windy day, the grid can only cope with so much. It likes to keep a frequency of around 50 hertz. That's, if you like, the power for the energy. If it goes much beyond that, then they have real problems, and then power stations start tripping off, and that's when sometimes we get blackouts around the country, would you believe? If it drops much below that, exactly the same thing. So it needs to keep a constant 50 hertz, plus or minus 5, as best as it can. And that's momentum, if you like, and that energy is maintained by big gas turbines. And then, of course, they bring in other energy just as when they need to, in order to take away the sort of the flexibility or the variance in that plus or minus 5. But sometimes wind can really destabilize things. And as I say, if it goes much above the sort of 50 hertz, then they need to dump that energy. They need to basically give it away. They're under contract with these wind companies to produce an amount of energy, and that's what they've bought. And so they can't just tell these companies to sort of shut down and then restart. It actually takes quite a lot to do that, and costs a lot to do that as well. It's actually cheaper to give that electricity away for free. So there were several times in the year did we get in January? I'm not sure we didn't. But anyway, certainly in between August and December last year, probably 5 or 6 days where there are periods in the day where the cost went negative. So what that means is that the grid are paying companies with green licenses, such as Octopus, to get that energy off the grid. So they then give it to you for a negative price, which means every watt of energy that you use that day, Octopus will pay you for, because the grid are paying them for it. So I mean, that's fantastic. Sometimes it was negative 8 or 9 pence, and it might have only been for an hour and a half. But you know, if you need the energy during that time of the day, particularly if you're charging your car, then that's excellent. So we might only be talking about 70 or 80p, or maybe a quid or something, depending on your energy consumption on the day. But it's free, and it's better than free. They're giving you money, so that only has to happen, a few times over a period of a few months, and it can have an impact on your bill. I say it's not massive, but when you look at people paying 18, 19 pence for electricity at fixed rate, and you're paying 8 pence, and sometimes it's free, then you're on the right tariff, and plus you're saving on carbon, and you're making the planet a little bit greener as well. So you can have that sort of smug look on your face. Anyway, joking aside, it's a great tariff. So I'll put a link in the bottom, a little bit, probably around here on the video, or perhaps in the description at the bottom. Also, if you're using the Agile tariff for your car charging, particularly if you're using My Energy devices, and I think Omi also have a similar platform, it'll link up to your Octopus Agile tariff and your accounts when you put in the details, and you tell the platform how much energy you want to charge your car up with, and it will automatically download the prices for that day and charge your car at the cheapest time, sometimes coming on for half an hour, going off, leaving it for an hour, and then coming back again to do it for another half an hour, etc., until your charge is complete. Then that's superb. So the energy companies are driving this, the government's driving it to a large degree, and of course the EV world, EV charging systems and platforms, all these new companies coming out like MyEnergy are really grabbing this now as a real way forward of saving EV owners the cost of their charging their car, which is already super cheap anyway. So why do we go on to Go? And I'll get in there, okay? So we're going to go on to the stats in a minute, but I think this is really important. Why do we go on to Go? Well, it won't have escaped your notice that during November and December and January, we didn't have an awful lot of sun, so that our solar panels haven't been generating very much. We went from 800 kilowatts down to about 150, 160. And certainly during December and January, we seemed to have a lot of high pressure weather, which was coming from the east, which gave us a lot of sort of still days, a lot of sunny days, which was quite nice, but it also gave us a lot of still and overcast days. And of course, they're the worst type of days that for green energy, because there's no wind and there's no sun. As I said, it's the wind that has the biggest effect in terms of the grid offloading some of that energy or being able to cope with the frequency. So we had long periods, and when we're looking at the agile prices, it was going down. It was going up quite significantly. The savings were coming down. So we were looking at prices of around 11, 12, 13, 14 pence, which is very similar to what you get as a standard flat rate with MyEnergy. And of course, because we were charging the car quite a lot, we were filling the car up with energy at 14 pence per kilowatt. So our weighted, that means what we were using, went up from sort of 8p to like 13, 14 pence, which was getting quite expensive. So then we looked at the Go tariff, and the basic rate for the Go tariff was, in our area, was about 13.5p. In fact, that might be consistent throughout the Octopus network. I think it's the daily rate that might change. But we looked at it and thought, well, that's kind of where we're at now anyway. And off peak, which was between 12:30 and 4:30 in the morning, they were charging us something like 5p per kilowatt. And that's when we'd need to charge the car. So without the benefit now of the cheap agile and negative pricing, we can now benefit from 5 pence. And so we did. We swapped over to Octopus Go, and our weighted price, because we were using a lot of energy off peak to charge the car, so going back to work, then our weighted price came much closer to sort of sub 10 pence again, which is kind of almost where we were with agile. During this time, the agile prices kept going up and kept going up. So we're now much cheaper than agile. So you need to be a little bit, or you can be a little bit flexible with your tariff. Now, you used to be able to flip and flop day to day if you wanted to, if you were that keen on really micromanaging it. But they've stopped that now, and I can understand why they've done that, because they just can't make any money if you keep flip-flopping between the two tariffs. So now if you move from a fixed tariff onto a smart tariff, which Agile and Go are, then you can't go back onto a smart, you can't go back onto another tariff. You can't swap back over for 30 days, I think it is. So yeah, that's how it is at the moment. So I can understand why they've done that. However, I did get an email asking me to go on to Go Faster. And this is a really cool tariff, because you can actually change, or they give you a number of options as to when your cheap energy is. It doesn't have to be between 12:30 and 4:30 where it's 5p. You can actually have 3-hour slots that are 4.5p, so it's even cheaper. Or you can do what we've done and go for a 5-hour slot between 10:30 and 3:30 in the morning at 5.5 pence. So that's what we've done. So now we're looking at getting a second EV in the house. Some of our appliances we can run on an eco for longer, and washing machines and maybe even tumble dryers, etc. We can have on a longer period. The car that we're going to get is got a larger battery, and if it was taking it from a sort of 10 to a 90% charge, it's going to take that much longer. So we went for the 5-hour tariff, and that seems to be working really, really well. The other great thing about it on a fixed tariff is that we don't have to worry quite so much about when we use our energy. So it's a little bit less green, it's a little bit less carbon, although, as I say, our biggest consumption is with the car, and that it is obviously typically off peak. We are still eating around 4 o'clock anyway, but of course the kids are off. They're not coming back from school very much anymore because, of course, of lockdown. So if you like, our sleeping habits have changed, certainly for the children quite a lot, and our social and eating has changed a little bit as well, but we're typically still eating around 4 o'clock, but sometimes that slides. But it doesn't quite matter so much now because it's not going to cost us any more if we ate at 5 o'clock than if we ate at 4 o'clock. But it certainly won't cost us any more. It just depends on how we are with our day and just how we're running our day. So we've moved away from, if you like, the super green in making sure that we were, or it was convenient for us to eat at around 4 o'clock, to now kind of moving around kind of how we want to. It's a little bit less stressful, I guess, and certainly for the family, we can pretty much do what we want now. But we still have that low cost, low carbon footprint with charging the car or 2 cars after sort of 10:30 at night till 3:30 in the morning, when electricity is typically that much cheaper. So there are apps you can also get which will compare the prices between fixed, agile, go and go faster. I'll try and put some links in the bottom for you to those, so you can actually see each day whether you were cheaper on what you're on, or what you were on, and see when it might be a good time to change. I suspect for us a good time to change might be when we get more sunnier days, when the wind becomes more variable, and we'll just keep a track on that and just see when it's a good time to go back to agile. So as I say, agile is a fantastic tariff, but hasn't been that good during December and January, which is why we changed. So let's take a look at the edge of the projection. Or let's have a look at our consumption on the SolarEdge platform, which I always do. And you'll just notice here, which is why we had a sort of long introduction, that the usage curves are slightly different as we go through the day. So let's get a look into it. Okay, so let's get into it then, shall we? Let me just move this out of the way. Right, so here we have the month of January 2021, just as an overview and just to run through what we can see on the top here. Notice we've got 7.75 kilowatts of power on the roof and the 5 kilowatts inverters. The most we're going to get out is 5 kilowatts. And this is from the 1st of January till the 31st of January. We produced 168, which I think was about 40 kilowatts more than we were projected to get, which is fantastic. And our self-consumption was 155 nearly, and we exported 14 kilowatts. We don't want to export anything because our export on the SEG now, well, that's one other thing I should mention. Your export, if you come off the Agile tariff, you come off of the outgoing Agile or Octopus outgoing. It's not outgoing Agile, that is again based on rates, but a fixed outgoing is 5.5p. But if you go on to the in inverted commas fixed tariff of Go or Go Faster, then you go on to the standard SEG and you have to re-register with them for that, which is a bit of a faff. But as long as you've got your installation certificate, they ask you for a couple of numbers off of that, and you're done. It's done almost instantaneously. You get an email back straight away. So that's an autonomous process. So that's now 3 pence, I believe it is, or 3. I'm pretty sure it's 3 pence, not 3.5p. So it's obviously quite a bit less. But in any case, even at 5p, you don't really want to be exporting back because it ultimately costs you more than that to buy it in. So consume as much as you can. And if you watched any of my other videos, I'm a big fan of the eddy because that tracks our solar and will suck all the extra juice out of those panels. So we use a lot of what we produce, so 92%, and we only exported 8% of that 14 kilowatts, which is great to see. Total consumption for the month was 780 4 kilowatt hours. And remember, this is car charging as well, so that sounds like a lot, but if you've got a car charge and you're putting in 20 kilowatts a day, then you can see how that adds up really, really quickly. So of the 700, produced 154, so our panels contributed towards 20% of our overall consumption, which is pretty poor, really, because of course it's January and the month is pants, really, isn't it? Let's be honest. So we can see here of the red and the blue and the green, which shows us our consumption, solar production, and self-consumption. So yeah, you can see that our consumption basically outweighs anything that we produce, and that's why you can see those figures there at the top. And then coming down here, comparing, because we only started in September last year, that's the blue figures here. Then you can see here that we come on to the following year, January, and as we go through the year and the years that we own it, these bar graphs will all be able to compare with each other and sort of sit alongside, much like they do at the top here. So let's go to a daily consumption then. So if I come back to January the 1st, I'm going to need to do this here, January the 1st. I have to say, I'm quite looking forward to giving you the February breakdown, because we have had some terrific days in February where we had some sunrise at sort of 7:30 and sunset around 4:30, and we were pretty much banging out 5 kilowatts for that most part of those days. We've had some great days in February so far, but that's for another day. So January kind of finished pretty much how December finished off, pretty poor. Just a reminder, these scales on the side do change each day because of the amount of generation or amount of consumption. So if our consumption or generation hits around 5, 6, 7 or 8K, then you see this graph on the side, this axis change. Of course, this doesn't change because this is during the day. So yes, from 8 o'clock in the morning till about 3:30, pretty poor day overall. It hasn't even given me a bar chart up here, 1.3 kilowatts, which is pretty pants. Moving on to the next day then, this is a very interesting graph here. So what's happened here is it's a very slow start to the day, normally sort of cloudy and overcast. The cloud breaks up, and then we start getting the solar generation here, which is fantastic. And it peaks like this, sort of up and down as the cloud comes in and out of cloud, as the sun comes in and out of the cloud. I wish this thing would go away. So if we have a look at this, you can see here that my solar production and self-consumption is being tracked here. This is the eddy doing the job. I speak very highly of the eddy. I can't recommend it enough, really. And then where it goes green over the top, there, that's the excess. So the eddy has used its 3 kilowatts, and it's produced 4 kilowatts at peak that day. And then just before 4 o'clock here, we're even though we're on the Go Tariff now, we're still eating at around 4 o'clock. So the oven is on at sort of 3:30, and we're finished by 4 o'clock. And the rest of the day then is just sort of overnight general consumption. A similar-ish day, perhaps low consumption there, or low generation there during the day of 4.9 kilowatts, so not an awful lot to write home about there. Or the following day, some very low days. We had a week or 2 weeks almost of pretty poor energy consumption, 41 watt hours. I mean, that's 7.5 kilowatts on our roof, or 7.75. So yeah, that's pretty poor, really, let's say. Yeah, okay, so let's move on then, shall we? On to the next day. We've got 1.9 kilowatts. If you see sort of 2 or 3 kilowatts being generated here at night time up until 4 o'clock in the morning, this will be our washing machine. Probably not our tumble dryer, but certainly our dishwasher. And there's some very economical modes on those appliances, particularly the dishwasher, because it fills up with an amount of water, maintains the heat on that, and only replaces it with the pump and heating as and when it needs to, and it detects that the water's getting too dirty. So you see here it peaks up and down, up and down. So and it's the same actually with your oven. It won't use 3 kilowatts right the way through the cooking. It will come on and off and on and off, and that's why you see those peaks. Okay, on to the next day. Yeah, some more peaks here of an evening when sort of beyond sort of 10 o'clock when the car charging comes on.
One of the things that I've noticed about the Ohmi charger as well, which is really good, is that it doesn't just bang out 7 kilowatts of charging. It's not like an on or off switch. It will actually vary the level of charging depending on how much you need and how much it's got to do. So if you only want to use charge up with 10 kilowatts into your car, which well, let's say, yeah, which is about 25% on our Nissan Leaf, you can easily do that in an hour and a half. So what it does is rather than just pumping 7 kilowatts in, it's far better for the battery to trickle charge that power in over the 5 hours, and it does that, and it's much better for your battery. It's actually better if looking after your battery than my Zappi is, which the only great thing about the Zappi is its solar ability. The rest of it, to be honest with you, is just a dumb charger. Mind you won't appreciate me for saying that, I'm sure. Okay, so looking further on into the week, then it's just dull, and this is why we went over to Go and Go Faster, because yes, we did produce more than what we were expected to produce, but the prices for Agile were just that much higher. So it just didn't make any sense to stay on it. This is a really interesting day, isn't it? Looks at lots of little peaks and troughs, but of course not using a lot of energy today, and the sun's sort of coming in and out of the cloud. But peak here, look, 1.5 kilowatts. It was pretty dire, and then 3.55 used for the day, or generated for the day. 2.12 again for the day. 1.21. Yeah, pretty poor. You see on these days here, I mean, less than a kilowatt's produced. 96% of our consumption was imported, and we imported around 20 kilowatts. If we're not charging the car, we're generally around between 12 to 15 kilowatts for the day. Hopefully I should be able to show you a general day as we go along here. Lots of usage overnight here, and charging the car and appliances. And again, you can see this peak here before 4 o'clock. So Agile has taught us well, I would say, because we're still very green, even though we're on the Go tariff, which in itself is still a green tariff, but perhaps not arguably as much as Agile is. So yeah, lots of charging overnight. Again, this is the Ohmi charging at sub 3 kilowatts, and then goodness knows what was going on here. Probably cooking around lunchtime. Well, what we also do is when we do see solar, we chuck stuff on. I mean, that's the sensible thing to do. My wife's very good at that. She sees that the sun's out, and then she goes and puts the washing machine on. So yeah, I like that. I like that. What man wouldn't like that? This is a pretty good day, generating from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sort of sporadic solar, but the hot water's on our house at the moment, because we can't really predict when we're going to get decent solar. So if it's on overnight and we get really good solar, the eddy will pick up and it will top the tank off, and then once it's heated, it'll drop off and then come on again and drop off and come on again and drop off as the hot water's used and the tank recirculates. So you can see lots of green here of excess solar production over and above what we're using. So that's quite a nice description of a good solar day. Again, at night time here, the Ohmi's charging nicely. We had a problem with our Zappi, and it took about a month for the guys to be able to come out and replace it with a new one. More of that on another video. RCD trips, etc. But yeah, I can talk about that on another video, because it's a subject in itself, believe me. The Ohmi's here is charging nicely. So we had the Ohmi installed as a backup for the Zappi. I find myself talking about Zappi again, but I will cover it in another video. And it was holding around sort of 2.5 kilowatts here to sort of top it up. We typically keep the car charged up to about 65% when my wife is using it for short trips, just to keep it sort of mid-level range, so it's not stressing the battery too much, and it gives her the ability to go off and do some trips to see her friends or her mum if she needs to without worrying about it. And then if I need it for work, it's up to about 80 or 90%. Poor day, going to move on. And then we have another poor day, 493 watts. Is that a record? Is that a record? It's probably close to a record, isn't it? 1.5 kilowatts, 2.5. See the scale changing here on the left-hand side. It's a 21 kilowatt day consumption. This is a nice day, right from 8 o'clock in the morning till sort of late afternoon. Some good generation and good consumption here. So 13, nearly 14 kilowatts produced that day. This is a really nice, what I like to call the bell curve. This is a sunny day all day. This is a nice winter sunny day until it's sort of clouded over late afternoon. When we're in the sort of peak summer period, you can see this bell curve going right the way until 8 o'clock in the evening, which you would have seen on my September videos. So it's obviously a shorter solar day, but this is kind of what you want to see, is the sun coming up, reaching its sort of perigee at around lunchtime, and then starting to sink again below the horizon as the afternoon comes on. This is the eddy again, which is using all of as much as it can of the solar production, but of course we're exporting back to the grid here because we're not using it. So that would have been a good day to put the tumble dryer on, perhaps. So nearly 21 kilowatts that day, and we exported 4.5 kilowatts. So that's going to be about 12-13 pence back to us when it comes. 13 kilowatts again, not a bad day. And here we are on the 24th of January, absolutely nothing, 1.4, and we imported 34 kilowatts. So we were charging the car quite a lot here, and a few peaks here with washing machine or tumble dryer on, I suspect. So charging overnight, and then into the next day onto the 25th, charging again overnight. Another nice day here. This is a nice bell curve here, which is nice to see. And you can see here, as we got up towards 4 kilowatts, we were pretty much using everything. Now, I think this was the day that we got the Zappy back. So we were between the eddy and the Zappy, they were using pretty much everything. So there's a perfect day of the eddy and the Zappy working in harmony to maximize our consumption of our production. So here we go, 22.82 kilowatts produced, and we only exported, well, less than 1 kilowatt, which is, if you want a winter's day, that is a great day. Other than the consumption at nearly 50 kilowatts, that is a great solar day. And then coming through and continuing through again, a fairly typical day for us, really charging overnight or appliances overnight, and a very typical January in terms of solar production. And then continuing on, another typical day, 2 kilowatts, and not an awful lot produced there, but quite a fair bit of consumption. And then a spiky day. All these little blips in here is just our fridge freezers kind of sort of regulating the temperature. So we've got three. We've got three. Well, we've got 2 fridge freezers, which is one in our house, one in the garage, and another full upright freezer in our garage. We're running 3 at the moment, which is why our base load is reasonably high here, around 400 watts. And this is the 29th, and then the 30th. 30 days hasn't April, June, and or 31. So one more day, hopefully, here in January. Yeah, okay. So there we are. That is the end of January, and that is the end of the topic for January production. As I say, we did produce more than we were forecasted, which is great. Hopefully, you saw some decent kind of bell curves in there. Oh wow, look at that. So at the end of January, we went up to the 8 kilowatts at one point. That's a lot. So going into February is going to be interesting. But February so far has been pretty reasonable in terms of sunshine. So I'm looking forward to showing you that. If you are interested in Octopus Energy, I'd really recommend it. It is so much cheaper than the big 6. It does give you the flexibility if you want to micromanage your energy with Agile, or if you're charging your car and that's your biggest consumer, then Go Faster. And if you want to earn yourself 50 quid, then you can use my referral link. That is, I think, better than if you went in green, which I think they give you 25 quid. It also gives me 50 quid as well, so that really helps me too. And I'll put some links in there also on the MyEnergy website and the MyEnergy products as well, if you're interested in going down that route as well. So that's the end of January. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you again very soon.